different locations, but for 6 years. I'll give you a brief commentary about what we're doing and what we're asking for, and then maybe turn these folks over to you for any additional questions they may have, and I'll ask them to affirm if anything I've said is incorrect, as they're sworn in and I'm not. But certainly we'll let you know that Natural Grocers has approximately 33 stores here in the state that they're making an application for to have fermented malt beverage licenses. We're about a little more than halfway through that process. And what they're really looking to do is act upon the requests of their customers, and that is to carry some beer products or fermented malt beverage products consistent with the other products they carry in the store. So it's going to be organic beer, gluten-free beer, kombucha, and some high-end craft beers. But really, the other type of products are not going to be on the shelves. The shelf space is relatively limited. They have about 8 feet of display space that they'll be using, and it's for those products as just described that are consistent with essentially the other organic type products that are sold at the locations. Folks are asking for that. So they do have a training program. They certainly are going to use tips training for all managers. They have an internal training program for employees in terms of computer-based module to make sure that they understand, for instance, the difference between vertical and horizontal ID, issues associated with visual intoxication. And the magic new law really is that everybody under the age of 50 has to be carded, so they'll have signage at their point-of-sale system showing that anybody under the age of 50 has to be carded. I've asked this question to many folks, do I get carded? The answer is yes. I'm 49 and a half. So, but from that standpoint, everyone seemed to be answered the question correctly, and anybody over the age of 50 does have to be carded, and that's the process. The employees are trained on an annual basis, and if they fail in their training, for instance, or sell alcohol to a minor in a compliance check conducted by the town or by the state, it would be a termination of that employee. But their point of sale system is set up, at the front of the store, with the beers at the back, so it can't be stolen. And as I said, it's be limited amount of product here, but they understand the heightened level of regulation and scrutiny associated with these type of sales. So they have a program set up statewide in terms of the Director of Operations, Blaine, as well as at each local level here to make sure that there is compliance, and compliance is the critical issue. In terms of needs and desires, Ms. Semino has put together, obviously, the petition and survey that you have a packet of. It shows about a 96% favor rate for issuance of license based upon needs and desires. I think there's approximately 6 signatures against. Some of those signatures don't even go to need and desire. They go to issues such as no reason or competition or something to that effect. But certainly a high percentage, very high petition number is atypical high, as Ms. Semino can testify to. If I may ask these folks if there's anything I said that's incorrect, and Ms. Semino, is there anything I said that's incorrect in regards to your role here?
No, sir.
And Mr. Cotton, what about you?
No, sir.
I get it right in terms of the process for carding and the process for making sure that we have compliance and lawful actions associated with alcohol sales.
Yes, sir.
Very, very good. Well, I don't have anything additional. I tender these folks to you folks for any additional questions you may have, and appreciate your time.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
I've got my normal question, and again, thank you very much, and thank you for covering the TIPS program. Question, do you have a background dealing with alcohol and what have you in your tenure in your business? I'm just curious. And have you both of you or yourself taken the TIPS training so you know what's coming around the bend for your employees?
I have not taken the TIPS training yet. It's required within 6 months of employment at the store for any department managers and up. It hasn't been presented to us yet, as the process is just beginning,
Okay.
but I know that they do have it established.
And that will be a mandate for all employees, obviously, once you have that product on the shelf. That's a fair assumption.
Yes, sir.
If I may distinguish a little bit on that, though, I think the managers are all going to have that responsible vendor training tips program. The other individuals, or the individuals who are not managers, they will have internal-based, computer-based module training. So that training won't be the tips training, but it'll essentially cover the same issues that TIPS covered with the managers. And then I think, you know, Mr. Cotton could talk about this if you so wish, but they also have huddles, as they're called, or daily get-togethers essentially at the store to make sure that those very principles that come from TIPS are being followed. That is that we're carding individuals over the age of 50, as well as we're looking at the ID to make sure that the individual on the ID is the individual, as well as signs of visible intoxication.
And we do not hire anybody under the age of 18 in our store. All of our crew will be trained on the proper alcohol selling procedures, and all the managers, like we said, will be TIPS certified. Anyone between the ages of 18 and 21 will have additional supervision from a manager who is 21 or over. And so there will be constant supervision of anybody who is not fully TIPS certified by those who are.
Okay, and I very seldom speak for the board, but I think everybody would agree we take drinking and driving very seriously in this town, and especially with minors. I think you made a comment about determining if somebody was under the influence. Well, that's secondary. They shouldn't be in your store, but we just want to make sure that minors are not getting their hands on alcohol, because no parent needs a phone call late at night, and you probably don't want to be the business or one of your employees has sold it to them. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any additional questions?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may, just clarify the timeline on the training. There will be training done, TIPS training for managers, an internal training process put in place prior to your store selling alcohol.
Prior to alcohol entering the store and being received, yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Would anybody from the public like to speak on behalf of this liquor license? Seeing none, would anybody in the public like to speak against this liquor license? At this point, we'll bring it back to Ms. Hogan. Proper notice was posted according to our board packet.
Yes.
At this point, we'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
Motion to approve retail fermented malt beverage off-premise license for Natural Grocers located 1216 Baptist Road.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan, will you take roll?
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Kootman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
That motion passes 7-0. Congratulations.
Good luck.
Thank you for your time. Folks, have a good night. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hogan. See you.
Thank you.
February 2019 financial report. Mr. Romans.
Good evening. I believe you all already have the the February 2019 financials. Are there any questions regarding those?
Questions from the board?
Could you tell me what the balance is in the 2A water fund and actual liquid cash?
I would have to, I don't have that right in front of me, so could I get back to you on that?
Sure.
Okay, 2A water fund? Let me look real quick just to make sure I don't have it here. I'm sorry, yeah, I do have that. In the 2A water fund and the Colo Trust water fund account, it is $2,218,402. And that's as of the end of February.
And is that actually cash in the bank that can be
That
proven
is.
with a bank statement?
Yes,
Great, thank you so much.
certainly.
That was on page 12, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Any additional questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. Romans.
Certainly. More, okay. thanks.
Great job, Robert.
First for everything.
Pikes Peak Business and Education Alliance Program.
There's a slight delay, so don't panic if it doesn't immediately change.
Great. So you don't have to try to hack the last name.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Bob Gemignani. I am the incoming executive director of a pretty exciting emerging community initiative called the Pikes Peak Business Education Alliance. I wanted to thank Mr. Foreman for inviting me here today to talk to your community about this, and I believe there may actually be some ultimate prompting from Mr. Mayor about this program. So thank you, board and Mr. Mayor, for making some time in the agenda to hear about this program. So I do have a D49 name tag on, and that's where I'm currently employed. Starting July 1st of this year, I will be moving along to be the executive director of this new initiative. So thank you very much for your attention. Quick outline of the presentation today. Really what I'm going to do is establish the why around workforce development in K through 12 education. And I'd really like to tie it into a couple of the proclamations that were talked about earlier. The proclamation about Child Abuse Prevention Month. There was a reference to protecting young people, and that young people are the future of our economy and of our world. I mean, that's a fact, right? And so really what this program does is it helps us transfer knowledge to the next generation about education and how that education connects with the world of work. And then it also goes to economic vitality. I mean, if we're not educating students to enter occupations that are in significant demand in our community, we're doing a disservice to them and to the businesses in our community as well. So this is just a real quick summary about some of the symptoms with regard to talent shortages in our community, throughout our country, and throughout the world. There's about 45% of employers throughout the world and within our country. It's relatively consistent based on manpower surveys. 45% of employers are having difficulty filling positions. And there are certain reasons that we'll get into. There's about 52 million people that are going to be displaced from jobs here in the next 10 to 15 years due to automation. So there's a significant need for retraining of incumbent workers, as well as informing young students coming through the K through 12 system about what those jobs look like in the future. There's also about 15% of employees that are actually engaged in their jobs. So I hope that doesn't apply here to the Board of Trustees and the Town of Monument. But believe it or not, about 85%, according to surveys through Manpower, 85% of employees are not engaged in their work. That's a pretty big number. And we think that's a symptom of maybe people not being connected to the right occupations as they go through school. So what you're seeing up there now on the display are the top 10 most difficult to fill occupations. I know those icons are a little bit small. But they range from the skilled trades in construction and advanced manufacturing to engineers, drivers, IT professionals, cybersecurity, computer science, and all types STEM careers. The primary reasons that there's talent shortages really have to do with a lack of applicants, a lack of experience, and a lack of training. And so in setting up the why for the Pikes Peak Business Education Alliance, our emerging community initiative, what we're trying to do is to tell this economic story to our teachers, parents, and students coming through the K through 12 system, what that landscape looks like for demanded occupations, to help inspire young people to explore careers that are in high demand. And if they have the talents and aptitudes and interests that can apply into those occupations, more the better, right? So here's some of the costs of the skills gaps that exist in our current workforce, and also in the talent, labor, and supply imbalances. Pardon me, do you have a cough button? It's allergy season. Cost to employees, $1.4 trillion of student debt in the United States, a 45% college dropout rate. So what I take from that is we have a lot of students going to college to figure out what they want to major in. That's not productive. We want to try to flip that paradigm as students are moving through K through 12. We want to tell a different story. We want to help connect a student's pursuit of education to where they're going to land and deploy in the economy, to make sure that their investment in post-secondary education or a training certificate is going to be a worthwhile ROI for them, okay? Cost to employers, $7 trillion, this is worldwide, $7 trillion of lost productivity because employees are disengaged at work. That is a huge number. And then in the US, $250 billion cost for skills gap, where the aptitudes and the skills and the experience of employees is not matching the role that they're in. So long-term solutions, engaging K through 12. What we're really calling employers to do, and what we're looking for our K through 12 education partners to do, is to try to pick away at the reasons for these talent shortages. In the top cause, with the lack of applicants, what we're wanting to do is attract students to pursue these high-demand occupations, because there's unfilled jobs. There's a lot of unfilled jobs in our community. There's a forecast, for example, of 1.8 million open cybersecurity jobs in the next 6 years throughout our country. We have 1,600 open RN jobs just in El Paso County. The University of Colorado at Colorado Springs graduates about 100 nurses a year. It's not sustainable. We need to help fill that talent shortage. We are also wanting to provide outcome-based training for students so they can gain the experience as they're going through secondary education and deploying into the workplace after high school, so that they can have a resume enhancement. The town of Monument is actually an early adopter in our program, so thank you all very much. Mr. Foreman and his staff are creating an internship for public administration here with your town, so thank you. Ms. Chapin from Tri-Lakes Cares was actually, they have the distinction of receiving the first intern from our PPBEA program that was a cross-district placement of a student from School District 20, so thank you very much for doing that. And then we also want to try to accelerate occupational and certificate programs to have students in high school, instead of forcing them to have to go to a post-secondary full 4-year degree, to accelerate that programming with employers informing that education and informing that curriculum to help students deploy into these demanded occupations more quickly to help solve these problems. So what actions can employers take? Right now they have 4 choices. They can build a talent pipeline from scratch, which we are doing. We're taking the initiative and taking strategic action in our community to build our own talent pipeline with the help of businesses and with our Pikes Peak Business Education Alliance community of school districts. They can buy talent, they can borrow talent, or they can bridge talent. The borrowing is really what's killing our employers right now. You think about all these open nursing jobs. I talk to our community health professionals all the time. They're stealing nurses back and forth. It's just completely unsustainable. So we're going to help try to solve that problem. So in the K through 12 space is the most workforce, it's the most dense workforce population out of all of our education spaces, K through 12. So why not engage it? All right, so the Pikes Peak Business Education Alliance is the framework for our solutions and framework for success. We were unanimously adopted as a program by every single superintendent in our community, School District 38 included. Thank you for your participation in early adoption. Dr. Lori Benton is actually the board secretary for the Pikes Peak Business Education Alliance currently, and she's been a great partner of ours. We decided to collaborate as a community of school districts versus compete between the school districts, and we created this initiative to help keep our employers from getting overwhelmed by all of these fragmented school districts for inquiries to create these opportunities for student training and learning. We're adopting a community impact model. We want to create economic vitality throughout El Paso County and throughout our different taxing districts for the schools. We want to grow our own workforce, and we have a great practice to do that. We want to solve problems for industry and schools. Those are our 2 primary customers in this initiative. So our mission is to connect students' talents, interests, and aptitudes to the economic landscape. We feel that story, the economic story, has been lacking in K through 12 education, and we would like to kindly sort of disrupt that perspective. That's a really cool image that's up there on the board right now. The middle, happy and rich, is really, if we create an opportunity for students to connect their talents their aptitudes and their interests with occupations that are in demand, they'll be happy and rewarded financially, right? If I want to be a potter, it's not going to be a high demanded occupation. I may be very happy with what I'm doing, but I'm not going to be making a big economic impact for myself and my family. So we want to just tell that story. We don't want to dissuade students from pursuing their passion, but we just want to make sure they understand what the landscape looks like. So here's our adopted strategies. We've basically combined all the school district partners, and we're unifying our business development efforts through the Pikes Peak Business Education Alliance to reduce the amount of fatigue in business development from 17 separate entities to one. So we'll be the outward-facing business development, partnership development face of all the school districts. We're going to initially focus on in-demand occupations to help our employers in our industries to solve talent shortage problems. We're going to help businesses attract, inform, and train the next generation of talent. We're going to create, and we already have created, work-based learning opportunities for students to be able to explore careers, investigate occupations, and train in those occupations. And then eventually we want to unify all of these advisory boards and councils that the individual schools and programs have and collapse them to a single informed advisory council so that our employers can speak into the curriculum for our students to be able to get educated properly. This is the Work-Based Learning Continuum, which is a practice through the Colorado Workforce Development Council that our program has adopted as a key strategy to be able to help students explore, investigate, train, and be hired through that continuum as they go through education. And then the key feature, the key practice that we're utilizing is called the Marketplace. It's the Work-Based Learning Marketplace. It's our own internal Indeed.com, where it is completely set aside for work-based learning opportunities like class presentations, field trips or site tours, job shadows, internships of durations of 60 to 120 hours that articulate to course credit, and then eventual hiring, hopefully, with host employers as relationships are built with students and employers. And then on a grand scale, the Pikes Peak Business Education Alliance is part of a larger workforce development community that is emerging in El Paso County. So along with our quad post-secondary partners, the Pikes Peak Business Education Alliance, employers, and what's called the Pikes Peak Workforce Action Team, we're basically funneling all of our workforce development information through a website called WAM. It's called the Workforce Asset Map. So in your community, if you have a business that's interested to relocate here and they're doing a site survey, you can point these folks to the BEA as a K-12 workforce development opportunity. You can point them to the Workforce Asset Map, which is a partnership with all these folks up on the board. The Marketplace is going to be initially the web portal for employers to connect with students as they train through the system, and the website is listed there. All creating eventually a nice, adaptable, repeatable workforce development system that our employers and our industry partners can engage. That is it for me tonight. You've probably heard enough from me for now. Is there any questions?
Questions from the board?
I got a question.
Yes.
Are you looking, because I agree with everything that you say, it makes sense, and I think these spots are opening up because people went after the money and they're finding out that there's more to life than money. So I would probably take that rich out of your presentation, but are you working with the universities within Colorado to stop promoting $200,000 degrees that pay $20,000, $30,000 a year? Because this is a tricky one, because this $1 trillion debt you're talking about is going to collapse our economy. It's already been said, because it's doubled out of the housing. So I think what you're doing is fantastic, but it's again, it's not just about money.
That's a great question, and we agree. It's not all about money, but if a student who's investigating careers can join their passion with a demanded occupation, fantastic, right? We're trying to shift the paradigm. We're trying to change the conversation in K-12. We gave a presentation to the Colorado Springs EDC a few months ago. Peter Hiltz, our Chief Education Officer in D49, presented to the advisory board at EDC, and Dr. Venkat Reddy was there from UCCS. The presentation we gave was similar to this, but it was a little bit more education driven. And the first comment after our presentation was completed was from Dr. Venkat Reddy, and he basically said, based on what you guys are doing here in the community, we need to shift how we're educating at the university level. So I agree with you. I'm not an educator by trade. I'm a business person who's comically observed education, and I don't mean that as a diss in any way. I just think that education has lacked some critical information to help students make decisions as they go through K through 12. So I am an advocate of not having students go to college, especially if they don't know what they want to do yet. You know, delay that purchase of a college education if you're not sure what you want to major in, and especially if you're not sure if that major has a decent ROI to it, right? So I hear what you're saying.
Because you made an interesting comment with how many nurses are graduating, but there's only X schools here. So it's again, yes, we need those, unless if we go to a single source system that one side of the aisle wants, then you won't need nurses. But do we not fix these schools so more of our children that have that passion can go? Because I think passion just overrides filling these spots up, but I think there's a happy medium.
Oh, absolutely. And action is being taken at the post-secondary level. Pikes Peak Community College just had a program approval for an RN to BSN program. So they're going to increase capacity for students to be able to go through a BSN program at PPCC. So it's not simply currently reserved for a UCCS BSN graduate anymore. So these things are being addressed in our community. I'm really glad, the PPBEA, I think our timing has been really good to emerge. And we're also trying to align ourselves with post-secondary partners to make these transitions from secondary education to post-secondary a little more refined and more effective. And our post-secondary partners are hearing and seeing these labor market statistics to be able to help fill these open positions over time.
Is your program going to have some substantial focus on the trades, which is just such an amazing career?
Yes.
And if you want to be rich, that's probably where you want to be.
Yes.
So if you have the passion.
Yes. So the top 5 demanded occupational areas in our community are registered nurses, number 1, IT, computer science, cybersecurity, number 2, skilled trades and advanced manufacturing and construction, number 3. Number 4 is culinary arts and hospitality, number 5, business operations. And the BEA initially, when we launch, we're going to have a staff of 1, me. But we'll hire on a helper hopefully within a couple of months after July 1st. And we are going to be focusing on doing business development in those top 5 demanded occupational areas or industry areas to help solve the problems, to help our employers meet their needs and help students understand that there's a good living to be had in those occupations.
Well, thank you very much.
You bet. My pleasure.
Any additional questions from the board? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Item number 7, ordinance number 062019, an ordinance repealing section 15.12.100 of the Monument Municipal Code. Chief Sheriff.
Any questions? And just a little bit of a background, I was given this assignment back, I believe, in January, and I had the opportunity to do some research on this topic. And a couple of things really struck me. Number 1 is we don't have any ordinance against smoking when the Sheriff's Office has declared stage 1 or stage 2. And we don't fall under their ordinance, county ordinance. So I viewed that as a potential problem. The secondary problem is the board has the authority to declare whatever they wish in a fire situation, but it requires the board to meet and pass a motion to do something, and then when it's done, to come back and have another motion to suspend that. I viewed that as somewhat time-consuming and potentially dangerous to the community. We have experts in the county, and in fact, I brought our fire marshal, our local fire marshal, Jamie Baumgartner, to answer any questions you might have. It's confusing to the citizens when the town has one set of ordinances and the county is declaring a stage 1 or stage 2. So after examining and looking at those particular ordinances, my recommendation or staff's recommendation is to repeal the current town ordinance and replace it with the language that's before you that basically gives the authority to the county fire marshal and sheriff's office to declare stage 1 and stage 2 fire restrictions. And then we as the police department would enforce that if we needed to.
Okay.
It would be much more timely to do, it would be safer and less confusing to the citizens.
Any questions from the board?
Chief Shirk, this makes sense. Are there other municipalities in El Paso County that are also following suit with following the county's lead versus their own ordinance?
That I'm not sure. I don't know if our fire marshal can answer that or not.
Chief, I can't say that with any certainty who has and who hasn't passed a similar ordinance. I know this was a large discussion for all of us in the county last year about who's not, who is, who's in, who's out, and that sort of stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if that discussion's not occurring in other municipalities. But I can't speak to that, I'm sorry.
And maybe we're the first and it needs to be done.
We're the trailblazers.
Yes?
Any other questions from the board?
In looking at the chart on the code and the stage 1 and stage 2 with regard to outdoor smoking, et cetera, I'm not really clear on what the verbiage is saying there with regard to like private property, like sitting on the patio of your own home. Is that affected in stage 1 or 2?
So what happens there is on your private property, I guess you would say that yes, that would be one of those things that we're asking folks not to do or be careful doing. I think if somebody calls 911, then it's up to the interpretation at that point in time. Are you or are you not violating the burn ban at that point in time? That's only going to be enforceable by Chief Shirk and his staff. Fire districts have no enforcement authority whatsoever, so we'll be working with Chief Shirk and the staff here at Monument PD in that capacity when that occurs.
And we're gonna try to take the educational approach first. If somebody's smoking on their back deck and they have an ash can sitting right there and they're not flicking it out, that might just be a warning, hey, we're in a stage 1 or stage 2, stop doing that. If they were reckless in what they were doing, that might entail maybe a little bit of a painful enforcement.
So that's applicable in stage 1 and 2?
Yes.
So Chief, a question, this is a hypothetical, and I understand this because safety comes number 1, but again, this is kind of Big Brother. We want to make sure that people aren't getting warning. If someone has a zero landscape with all rock and they're on their deck having a cigar, and your department has this interpretation of, I think we got to be really careful about this. I think we do. I agree with this, but it's.
No, I agree with you.
That scares me, because the second that we approve this, that means that by default, it becomes an interpretation and it's not black and white. And I think we have a lot bigger fish to fry, so.
We have discretion as we enforce almost all of the municipal ordinance and or traffic violations. I mean, I have to look around here and ask how many of you have been stopped for speeding and didn't get a ticket. We have that discretion. Yes, sir, I'm looking at you.
I wasn't speeding.
He was
I
proven
stopped
that
at
he
the
wasn't.
light.
So, just like all municipal ordinances, it's up for discretion on the officer what they choose to do. And I got to tell you, our officers are pretty educational minded versus using a hammer all the time.
Okay.
Chief, can I add something to this?
Yes.
The largest contributor we see to smoking, and I want to go to your point about someone sitting in the backyard having a cigarette on their back deck in a zero-escape yard, the largest smoking complaint we get is folks driving down the roadway and throwing it out the car window.
Yeah.
That's where we're aiming the outdoor smoking perspective in that. It's not you sitting in the backyard smoking a cigar on your personal property. It does encompass that, I can't say it doesn't, or it's when you're standing down here at the park and it's a dry day and you're out there and you're smoking and you're just discarding your burned cigarette into the grass itself. That's what we're looking at. We're not focusing on the individual on their personal property behind their house having, we're not gonna see that first off. And if your neighbor calls, and as the chief said, the fire department's probably gonna get the phone, we're gonna go, they're in a zero-scape backyard, they have a can right here, this isn't an issue.
Yeah, and I think it's discretion and being an adult and responsible, and your guys have discretion. And again, I did get a ticket even though I stopped with discretion. But
Just being fair.
Any additional questions or comments from the board?
would you like a motion,
I
Mr.
would,
Mayor?
I would be happy to have a motion.
Motion for ordinance number 06-2019, an ordinance repealing section 15-12-100 of the Monument Municipal Code, open fire and burning bans, procedures, and replacing it with the banning of fires within the town of Monument in accordance with El Paso County fire restrictions during such times as any fire restrictions are in place in El Paso County.
Have a
Point of
motion.
order,
Do I have a second?
Your Honor. Do you mind, point of order, if you don't mind asking for public comment?
Oh, sorry. Do we have anybody from the public who would like to speak for this ordinance? Seeing none, do we have anybody that would like to speak against this ordinance? Seeing none?
I'm going to follow the attorney, Your Honor. Would you like me to read
It's muscle memory, I apologize.
Should I, again,
Yeah.
or?
No. Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay, so,
Okay.
mo-
Did you say?
No, I don't think he needs to.
oh, okay.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Kootman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
That motion passes 7-0. Thank you, sir.
Muscle memory.
Resolution. Resolution number 11-2019, a resolution authorizing the merger of Goodwill Industries of Denver into Goodwill of Southern and Western Colorado. Ms. Behrens and Mr. Cooper.
We've had a change. We do have Ms. Behrens, who's our Director of Finance, who you saw at the last meeting, and then I'm Carla Brazier, I'm the CEO and the President of Discover Goodwill of Southern and Western Colorado. So, would you like
Feel free to speak either at the table or at the podium, wherever you're more comfortable.
So we've introduced ourselves. I'd also like bond counsel.
Yes, so hi, I'm Sean Willett. I work at the law firm of Kutek Rock. My interest is in this transaction as I represent neither the town nor Goodwill, but I represent the transaction itself, just to make sure that the tax exempt status of the bonds remains unaffected and the bonds are still good, valid, and binding obligations. And I'll go through, I'll let them give a little bit of their presentation first, but then I'll go through some provisions of the bond documents to explain why we're here and what consents we need.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for allowing us to return to present to you. I really appreciate your diligence in looking into this transaction. I would do it no differently if I were in your shoes, so thank you. And I apologize for not being here at the last meeting to help represent the situation. So we have prepared a PowerPoint, and I will go through it with the help of Heather, and then Sean will jump in. So in January of 2014, BBVA Compass Bank, whose market president is actually here, Sean Thompson, and Discover Goodwill entered into a financing agreement to issue $15.65 million of bonds. Those bonds were issued in order to refund a Series 2006 bond issue, which was done through the County of Mesa, and which built our Grand Junction store and our Circle store and was used for other purposes. So the new bond issue replaced that existing bond issue, the balance of it, and then we also used it to build a beautiful new store in Monument, and also to buy a building on the southwest side of Colorado Springs to use as our transportation and donation hub. BBVA Compass Bank is both the lender and the holder of those bonds, and they remain in that capacity to this day. The current balance of those bonds is $12.42 million. So we paid down approximately 20% of bonds over the course of the last 5 years. So then, in late 2017, which seems quite a long time ago, especially to me, since I was involved, Goodwill Industries of Denver's CEO at the time and myself and our board started having a conversation about a merger. And since then, the boards have moved forward with this merger. We call it a merger. It's really rather an acquisition of the Denver Goodwill merging into Discover Goodwill of Southern and Western Colorado. The merger is for the purposes of improving the retail operations in Denver. It is also to protect the brand of Goodwill. It is to protect the employees who are employed at the Denver Goodwill, which are some 1,500 to 1,600 employees. The mission of Goodwill in Denver and its territory, and to create a much stronger organization going forward. And the ultimate goal is to increase, expand, and deepen the impact of our mission over time, being one Goodwill in Colorado. We expect the merger to take place May 31st of this year, and the merger requires approval from all parties, the town of Monument, both boards, and also BBVA Compass Bank, who is the lender and creditor in this case. And so now I would ask, since we're getting into legal language, if Sean would take.
Okay, and I'll summarize these pretty quickly and just kind of highlight the main points that I think need to be focused on. First is section 6.02B of the financing agreement, and what that generally provides is that the borrower may not merge into or consolidate with any other entity without the consent of the town. And that's the major reason we're here today, is so that the town consent to this merger. And they'll speak a little bit more about the merger briefly in a little bit. But one thing to recognize here is, in this instance, all of the borrowers are going to remain the same. It's just another Goodwill entity, Goodwill Industries of Denver, that is merging into one of the borrowers. So not even a single borrower is changing in connection with this merger. It's just another Goodwill entity is merging into one of the existing borrowers. Next section is section 8.06. One of the questions that came up at the last board meeting was whether or not there would be any amendments to the bond documents relating to this merger, and whether any obligations would change. Under section 8.06, it has a general guideline that says, you know, most amendments do need the consent of the town. However, if you're amending financial covenants, the town's consent is not required as long as such amendment does not adversely affect the town's or its interest. The only amendments that are under discussion right now are amendments to the financial covenants, which the section 8.06 would apply to. So the only real question would be whether or not any of the amendments would adversely affect the town. And we're going to go into the amendments briefly after I go through all the legal sections, but it's my understanding that all of the amendments are only going to make the financial covenants stricter, not looser, so that the likelihood that the borrowers will have sufficient money to pay this debt will increase and not decrease. Then moving on to the next. The next sections kind of all go together. There's various sections that I wanted to point out, and the only reason I'm pointing out these other sections is I think one of the questions are, you know, what is the obligation of the town? And I wanted to get into that briefly, and just so that everyone understands, the town is not liable for debt service on these bonds. The town isn't guaranteeing them. They don't have to pay principal. They don't have to pay interest. The only reason that the town was brought into this is because Goodwill wanted to do the transaction on a tax-exempt basis. And under the federal tax law, to do this transaction on a tax-exempt basis, a governmental entity has to approve the issuance of the bonds. But Goodwill's, other than issuing the bonds, the town's only involvement is just as a pass-through entity. The borrowers make the payments go directly to the lender, and it just flows through. The town is not liable for anything as far as debt service on these bonds. It's just a complete pass-through. And we can go through these other sections if anybody requests, but basically all of these other sections talk about is that it's a limited recourse obligation of the town. It is not they don't have to pay principal, they don't have to pay interest. It's clearly a special limited obligation, and the town's only obligation is to pay any payments that the borrower pays over to the bondholder. And I think that gets us all the way back to the history.
There we go. So, just graphically, we wanted to represent Discover Goodwill, and then our relationship is directly with BBVA Compass Bank. The town does sit in this relationship in terms of being an issuer, but not in direct relationship. So, you might ask the question, why is there a merger consent in these bonds? Because if you're not really involved and you're not paying the principal and interest, why would there be a merger consent? Well, it's normally put in bond issues so that, for example, Discover Goodwill doesn't run off and get acquired by someone else, and then you're dealing with that entity and you don't know about it, and it's to keep you informed and be totally transparent about the transaction. And so that's why you usually see it there. The merger will not happen unless BBVA Compass gives consent, because they are the lender and the bondholders on these bonds, as well as the town of Monument. We've already talked about the lack of financial risk to the town. This bond issue is backed by tremendous balance sheet assets. And in fact, when Denver Goodwill merges into us, they have very little debt. They bring net assets to the table, and we have a combined balance sheet to show you next that will show that. You wanna go on? Go back one, Heather, would you? Thank you. So what Sean alluded to in terms of the covenants that would change and that they would become more stringent because of this merger, the debt service coverage is now at 1.25 to 1. We have to evidence always at any point in time that we have enough money to pay at a rate of 125% of our. That coverage ratio right now is about 5.6 against, higher is better, so against 1.25. Debt to unrestricted net assets will stay the same or become more conservative, and we are negotiating with BBVA Compass now, so I can't share with you exactly what that one will be. The liquidity ratio will become more conservative because we will be a larger organization. It is now $6 million under these bonds. It'll probably move to approximately double that. Right now, it is about at $23 million, so there's sufficient coverage over and above the 6, and indeed over and above the 12 that we would be asked to put forth. So from a balance sheet perspective, this is a highly safe transaction for Discover Goodwill, or our board and our stakeholders would not agree to it. So that gives me comfort as the leader of the organization. Heather can show you the balance sheet after we merge, which I think is important. I'd like to just run through the
just to
points.
highlight what Carla kind of covered in summarized fashion. This kind of illustrates where Discover Goodwill currently sat as of 2018, December 2018. We have been through our audit that was finalized in February 2019. It also outlines where Goodwill Industries of Denver was at December 2018. They are currently in the audit process. So those are unaudited numbers at this point, but numbers that we don't expect to change significantly. And as Carla mentioned here, the balance sheet just becomes stronger as a merged organization. We were at about $92 million in total assets at the end of 2018. Goodwill Industries of Denver will be about 42 combined. We're at 134 million. Again, just to reiterate what Carla had covered before, on the GID side, they are not as financed as Discover Goodwill is currently. They only have about 5.7 million in outstanding debt compared to about 28 million in net assets at the end of 2018. So we did carry forward a similar just illustration of the future arrangement under the bond obligations. This really doesn't change the relationship other than the financial covenants possibly between Discover Goodwill and BBVA Compass. The town of Monument giving their consent on this transaction. The only thing that changes is in this model is that Goodwill Industries of Denver would roll up into Discover Goodwill of Southern and Western Colorado. Which leads us to the formal resolution.
Questions from the board?
I've got a question, and this makes a lot of sense from the last, and we got a chance to talk, so thank you.
Yep.
In other states, do you see as Goodwill, are they one entity or are they broken off? This is something new to me. So like if I went to Arizona or California, are they just one big happy family? Or are they separate organizations, so to
That's a
speak?
great question. There's 160 autonomous Goodwills throughout the United States. Some states have 16 Goodwills in them. They're owned by their communities, each Goodwill. But we do have an organization, Goodwill Industries International, that helps to govern all of us getting along. They govern territory and brand, Goodwill Industries International. And so when a merger happens, it relates to territory. And so because they govern territory, they have to give permission. And so indeed, they have given permission for this merger. So just to give you an example, I think you mentioned Arizona. There are 2 Goodwills in Arizona, Phoenix and Tucson. In Kentucky, there's 1 Goodwill. In Ohio, there's 12 Goodwills. They're all owned by their communities and represented by the board of directors.
Okay, and then my last question, what would happen, and I don't perceive this, but what if the town didn't give you consent? What would you do?
We would have a problem. We wouldn't be able to do the transaction.
Well, we don't want to cause you a problem. I want to thank everybody for coming, and you handled all the questions and concerns that I had. The only one I would ask is, I guess, BBVA, you're in favor of this?
Yes, we
Oh.
are. We've issued terms to Discover Goodwill for the acquisition of Goodwill Industries in Denver. And going back, I do want to go back a little bit to Sean Willette's point. It was more than just a transaction in 2014. The town of Monument was very gracious in extending their conduit capability. But the town at the time, the board and the mayor were very interested in the job creation and the sales tax and to the service to the community that Goodwill provides. So there was a community component to it as well. I was here in 2014 and I was with BBVA Compass then, like I am today.
How many jobs are created for the town of Monument for the
We
Goodwill?
have about 42 jobs in our store here. Probably about half of those jobs are people who have challenges in a variety of different ways. It was very interesting to hear the gentleman who spoke about the Business and Education Alliance, because we have taken some of our resources along with a grant from Google to initiate IT training. So we've graduated 98 people in El Paso County in IT certification training who are making good money along those lines. So we really use our store to help people get a start in a career, and then we really hope to train them and move them either forward in our organization or up and out, along the same lines he was talking about when he was talking about Kate.
You've got the nicest, greatest people outside, inside there. I just want to
Well,
say
thank
that.
you.
So I mean,
We
A+.
will pass that along.
A+.
I do have a couple questions, if that's all right. I forgot your name.
Sean Thompson.
Sean. So you were here in 2014 when this agreement was first entered into?
Sir, will you stand up, please?
Yes. Sean and Sean will switch out. Keep the mention easy.
So I was wondering if you could tell me how this transaction actually took place, why was Monument chosen to be the pass-through, and et cetera, if anything you can shed some light on with that.
Well, Monument, the town of Monument has the capability, obviously, and the town of Monument exercised that capability in 2014. I did, through other community events, I had met with the then mayor of Monument,
Recall who that was?
Travis Easton, and the conversation just took place from there, and Goodwill had an opportunity at the time.
So you actually approached the mayor?
I don't know if it was a direct approach, but
You know, I was there and I can't recall, we looked at a variety of agencies to issue, but this one made the most sense, Town Monument, because we were building a store here. And we were creating jobs. So it made the most sense.
it was a good fit at the time, that's for sure.
And you were already planning on building a store here?
Yes, and that was why we needed to issue bonds for the building of the store and for the buying of a building that we converted into a warehouse and transportation hub.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your help.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you for your service as well.
Any additional questions?
I just want to hear the gentleman from BBVA say, if Goodwill, Discover Goodwill, goes default on their payments, what happens?
Well, there's a number of things that happens in the document. The town of Monument doesn't have any financial liability in that scenario, though.
So we're out of it completely if and when that happens.
No
And I don't
financial
expect
risk
it to.
whatsoever. We are the sole, for the 2014 issuance, we are the sole owner of those bonds. We underwrote those bonds. Monument just provided the vehicle for the tax exemption status of those bonds.
Fantastic. That's all. And I just want to compliment Discover Goodwill, especially on your transportation services. I've seen that operating firsthand. So you do a fantastic job, and I can only imagine a merger with Denver can expand those resources.
Any additional questions from the board? Do we have a motion?
I move public comment. Public comment.
For resolution?
Resolution.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. For a resolution?
Yes.
I thought it's been our practice to ask for public comment on just anything that you all
Okay.
know.
Do we have anybody from the public that would like to comment for this resolution? Ms. Howe?
I'd like to know what the credit liability is with this for the town.
Does the town have a credit liability in this?
No, BBVA Compass is the sole owner of the bonds. BBVA Compass bears all of the financial risk.
Sir? Ms. Hayes?
I was just going to say, Jerry Hayes with Charlie's Chamber of Commerce. Ever since I've been in my position as Chamber of Commerce, we have worked with Carla and Discover Goodwill, not just a monument, this was prior to even coming to Monument. We've taken a tour of their building, we know what they do an incredible service to the community, and I did a yah-yah when they said they were coming to Monument, because I knew that people would love them. So I've known her personally for several years, and I just think they are the most outstanding organization, and I think this would be a great thing to happen for them.
Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 11-2019, a resolution authorizing the merger of Goodwill Industries of Denver into Discover Goodwill of Southern and Western Colorado.
Second.
We have a motion? Do we have
Second.
we have a motion and a second? Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Romanella?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
That motion passes 6-1.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, I'd like to recognize Ms. Grazier. She was this year's Colorado Springs Chamber of Commerce Athena Award winner. So great job this year. Amazing support for our community, for the entire region. So we really appreciate you.
Congratulations.
And thank you all for your service and your willing to re-engage with us again. So we really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for bringing everybody this
Thank
time.
Resolution number 13-2019, a resolution authorizing revisions of the Town of Monument fee schedule. Ms. Hogan?
Well, I'd just like to propose 3 small revisions to the Town of Monuments fee schedule. The first being that I'd like to add the fee that we have traditionally collected for solicitors' licenses. I just noticed that it's absent. What we have charged in the past is $10, which covers basically a background check through CBI. We pay them directly $6.95, and then we laminate cards, and so there's just some administrative cost there associated to that. So we're not making any money, just trying to recoup what it costs to review the applications and provide the license itself. The second change I'd like to make is just the removal of the fees associated with the reservation of the band shell at Limbaugh Park. And for that, it's because it would make it a lot more affordable for nonprofit agencies to put on special events, so they wouldn't have to reserve the facility like throughout the day if they were going to do a concert. And since most of those organizations are doing fundraisers for the community, we're trying to make it more cost effective for them to do so. And additionally, the exclusive use of that band shell is available through the special event permit process that they already have to go through to do a concert or something like that. And then the very last one that I'd like to ask you guys to approve of is reducing the special event permitting application process fee for nonprofits back down to what it used to be prior to 2016, which is at no cost. And for the same reason.
What is it right now?
It's $100 for, there's no distinction between just anybody applying or a nonprofit organization applying currently, and it's a $100 application fee. We bumped that up in 2016, and I just suggest going back down to what we did before for the same exact reason, just to make it more affordable for nonprofit agencies to do fundraising, community events here in our town.
I just had a question on this soliciting IDs and what have you. So I just want to understand, when they're getting a lamination card, what you're doing, is there some type of ID for the town of Monument on that or something? So
yeah, it has a logo for the town of Monument. It also has my information on the back of the card. And it is something that if you are a solicitor and you are required to get this license, to apply for the license, to obtain it, and to carry it with you when you approach homes to solicit.
Okay, and then just to ask the chief, if it's getting that time of year where they start busing people in, and if they don't have these with the town logo, do you want residents contacting?
Yes,
Okay.
please give us a call. We've got those in the past, and we will often invite them to leave until they talk to the town clerk and obtain a solicitor's license. In our past practice, I think most of them have chosen to just leave.
Good.
Few, I think, have come in, but
Good,
mostly
good,
they just.
because usually they say, oh, no, we've already talked to town hall, everything's good, and it's
We've
like.
heard that, and we asked to see.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Laura.
Sure.
Is that information dated?
Yeah, there's an expiration, and it's just an annual. So if they come in April, then we make it for a calendar year for them.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I just want to clarify that there was a lot of red and strike through on the changes. I just want to clarify that the only things that we're changing in the current fee structure are these three items,
Yeah,
correct?
what all the other red parts that you saw was simply me trying to reformat the document. And
Gotcha.
I tried to include that clean copy for you guys, I just think it needs to be prepared a little bit more cleanly for the public, and because it is posted on our website, obviously the public needs to know what our fees are, so. But the only substantive changes are those three dollar amounts that I'm talking about.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yes.
And another thing, staff's been instructed to go through all of our fee schedules and do a review, and so you'll see a few more of these coming up in the future.
Do we need a motion on this, or does this go to the public first? I'm gonna ask. This is the resident.
I think we'll look to our.
You know what, I was informed by Ms. Clark that that I was incorrect, so I would defer. I think it's I think it would be better to actually invite public comment as a matter of course, but I was looking at the ordinance and I don't think it's clear on that, so I would encourage you to invite public comment and then ask for a motion.
Okay. Would anybody from the public like to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion.
Motion to pass resolution number 13-2019, a resolution authorizing revision of the town monument fee schedule.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Romanella.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Resolution number 14-2019, a resolution appointing an interim town treasurer. Mr. Foreman.
Mayor and Board, I'd like to withdraw my request for resolution number 14-2019 with a short explanation. Last meeting, y'all gave me the right to go ahead and hire Harry Whiteknight as our interim treasurer, town treasurer. He came to work on Monday morning, did a really good job. And then on Tuesday morning, showed up and informed me that he had quit the company that we'd hired him through. And so since he had quit that company, then we informed that company to bring us some more candidates. I think I interviewed 2 more candidates from that company and also recontacted HR Green. And so 2 of the candidates from Robert Half have not met our qualifications to work for the town. And so we're still working with HR Green, and I'm also contacting CML to see if there's any further candidates they can provide to us. So it's probably going to be at least another 2 to 3 weeks before we get through this process. So hopefully I'll have you a candidate by the next board meeting.
Okay. Resolution number 15-2019, a resolution appointing a town attorney for prosecution. Mr. Foreman.
Okay, I have a little bit better news on this one. The candidate that we had chosen last time decided that they didn't want to come to work for the town of Monument, but we had a backup candidate from Osmus Law Firm. I did contact them, and they are still willing to come work for us. As we had told you in the last one, we felt like there was not much different between the 2 candidates. There wasn't much difference in the amount of money that they were charging. And so I think we chose the other candidate because of their relationship with your firm. And so without that candidate, I would like to go ahead with Osmus Law Firm. I included their firm resume and everything in the packet. We have a contract that I've provided to our town attorney, and we'll be looking at that contract with your approval.
Okay. Questions from the board?
I would just like to reverse the process and get your suggestion and input on the contract prior to appointing them as the.
What I understood the board's direction was last time was for us to present to the board this evening at this meeting the contract for the first person. Now that first person has backed out, I think that we found that out too late. We found that out recently, and the second, the runner-up has submitted their contract, and I received that this afternoon. So I think we'll present it to you for your approval next meeting.
Okay.
So we'll be tabling the appointment at this time.
Is that what I?
No.
No. Okay.
No, I would like to go ahead.
Okay.
I would like to go ahead and have you approve this person, and then we'll work on the contract and approve the contract at the next meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
So approve this
misunderstood that nuance.
person and then approve the contract at the next meeting.
Right, and again, that was my concern, is again, hiring someone with, appointing someone to a position without negotiating the contract first.
Well, we can't hire them unless we have the contract.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I just need your approval to go ahead and
Saying that we're
contract.
going in the direction of Osmus.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
So we're not doing the formal appointment yet, we're just getting the contract initiated and then appointing?
No,
Is that what I'm understanding?
no, you're gonna give me the,
Is there a need for them prior to the next meeting?
when's our next?
It's the 3rd weekend. I would just offer that we need somebody, and we need somebody now.
Right.
We've got a lot of issues that need to be taken care of. We've been waiting for months to have somebody appointed in this position that can help modernize and deal with the bunch of issues that we're dealing with. And as fast as we can get them on is when we need them. I think we're kind of between a rock and a hard spot in that we put requests out there. We've had people turn us down. We have 1 candidate left. We need that candidate selected.
Okay.
And for some background, I think that's a point well taken, and I think it would be helpful for the board to understand how we came to this position. I would say 2 months ago or so, we
Right.
presented to the board a request to, we had identified a person that was Ms. Penaloza. We had requested the permission to enter into contract negotiations with her, and then it was the board's request at that time for us to basically cast a wider net, and that we did that, and we found some other folks went through CML, and that wider net actually produced just one other person. I spoke with Ms. Penaloza, let her know that we were kind of going this route, and that she was still in the mix, and she kept her name in the mix, and then I reached out to her and let her know that we had the board's direction from the last meeting that she had been selected. She later called me and let me know that she was no longer interested, so here we are, and then months have passed in the intervening time. And so we are, and in the intervening time, our present prosecutor is aware of our intention, so I think that has created some stress.
Just one more clarification, if I may. This particular candidate outlined the terms, the flat rate that they were going to charge per month, as well as what that includes. So I could make a motion to approve the resolution appointing contingent on the contract outlining the terms that have already been presented to us. I mean, basically what I'm saying is, I'm great with you getting the contract signed. I'm great with appointing, as long as the contract signed is what we're currently aware of.
Exactly.
So whatever the verbiage is to that, so contingent upon the signing of the contract that outlines the terms that we've already been presented with.
And what are those terms, just so that we're tracking?
Would be the flat monthly rate, as well as the pool of individuals available to assist us.
Okay. Yeah, they do have a flat monthly rate, and they do have 3 folks who provide backup to each other.
Okay, so I would like to
There's no charge for mileage or anything like that.
Okay.
So the contract would be with the Osmus firm, because we have Andrew and Christie, who potentially would be
Their backups.
handling the prosecution for the town.
Exactly.
I would like to know what is happening that we can't get candidates and that they keep backing out. What's going on?
There aren't that many candidates to begin with. It's a very specialized field, and there are just not that many to begin with. And I guess that's the answer. I put out a lot of feelers, and I found out and identified Ms. Penaloza, and that was the only one that I had identified through my efforts. And then Mr. Foreman had actually enlisted the help of CML, and I understand they did a blast email, and that resulted in just one other candidate. So there's just not a lot of folks who do this kind of work.
Yeah, and if you look at the resumes of the ones that we have, they're doing 6 and 7 towns. So it's like, there's not a whole lot of people out there doing this.
Is it like really a difficult job?
I think that's just the towns that need it, or towns like us that are far away from the larger towns. The larger towns have their own on-staff people, and so it's a long way to drive. It's a long way.
Would it be better for us to get someone on staff to do it? Have an on-staff prosecuting attorney?
Not for $600 a month.
No. You couldn't afford it. We only need them. How many hours do we need them a month? Yeah, Ms. Clark, we only need them for 5 or 6 hours a month.
Yeah,
That's all we need.
It's a market niche, and what these folks do is they put together kind of a collection of clients, and they make it work through just basically by geographic design and figuring out the days of the month. So it's this group is well thought of. They have several clients, and they do this for several towns.
Yep.
Well, thanks for answering my questions.
You bet.
Any other questions? Trustee Koopman, would you like to make a motion?
I would, thank you.
Oh, wait. Is there any comments from the public on this resolution? Seeing none, Trustee Koopman.
I would like to make a motion to approve resolution 15-2019, resolution appointing an attorney for prosecution contingent upon the contract being signed that outlines the terms for the flat monthly rate, as well as the pool of individuals capable and available to assist us with our needs.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
That motion passes 7-0. Item 9, discussion items, mitigation of construction-related safety concerns. Chief Shirk.
Thank you. Well, this has to do with Promontory Point Sanctuary. You're giving me that look?
Excuse me.
This has to do with the construction traffic on the east end of town, and specifically Glen Eagle Drive. And there's two issues that we've identified. One are complaints, and we've had very few complaints on general speeders, folks that are speeding on Glen Eagle. Very few complaints. As a matter of fact, the study that was prepared by H.R. Green in 2018 talked about there was only 0.3% of traffic going 40 miles an hour or over. I've had Corporal Stewart, our traffic safety officer, spend time up in the area, as well as Officer Romano, our community resource officer up there in that area looking. According to Corporal Stewart, the folks that were speeding, guess what? Were folks that live in that area. And there were very few of them that were speeding. So it's not a hot spot for speeders. There's other areas that we would just as soon concentrate on versus that. But because we have had some complaints, we will continue to educate folks as they speed on Glen Eagle. That's issue number one. Issue number two has to do with the concern about potential construction traffic that may happen up in that area. And I need to set the ball straight in this case. Construction traffic is legally allowed to drive on Glen Eagle, period. That's it. End of story. Done. Now, having said that, I have worked with Classic Homes, and our intent, and construction hasn't even started up there yet. This is a concern that people are talking about that hasn't even occurred yet. But we are taking a proactive approach. We're working with Classic Homes. We're going to put out information to all the vendors or all the trades that are going up there to let them know if you speed, if you're doing something illegal, we're going to catch you. And it's going to have a monetary impact on them because Classic Homes certainly has the right, if the trades folks are breaking the law, to cancel their contract. So we are looking at doing something to make sure that the allowed construction traffic at least obeys the law. Our community resource officers meeting with the HOAs and the neighborhood watch programs to discuss the issues with them, and we're meeting with Classic Homes to see what we can do to help them.
Questions from the board? Thank you for the update, Chief.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere, though.
Get the next one.
Well, I would actually like to defer this particular issue. I put it on the agenda originally because we found, because we had found at least 3 items pursuant to our current municipal ordinance, which requires anything over an original purchase price of $1,000 before we dispose of it must come to the board for approval. We have at least right now 3 items that we've identified, but we're going through lots of other things to try to clean out our area and give us more room. And so I don't want to talk about those 3 items yet until I get a big list together that has all the items. But I've got to tell you, $1,000 back when this ordinance was passed, and I'm not saying 1,000 isn't a lot of money, but back when this ordinance was passed, when you look at today's dollars, that's almost everything. And so to get rid of simple things is going to require it to come to the board. So I'd recommend at some period of time that ordinance be looked at to try to update.
Thank you. So we'll postpone item B for the future. No specific time at this?
No specific time. It's taking us a while to get through all the property we have. We have 10 or 15 or 20 vests that are expired. I can't sell them, I can't get rid of them, but I need your approval to send them to somebody to destroy. They're unusable, but I have to have your permission. So it's things like that, broken things that are over $1,000 purchased years ago that we have to have permission. So.
Mr. Mayor, I know you and I had this conversation and when we come to board authorization, but I'd like to have continued conversation. I think there's a lot of items that are coming to the board that are unnecessary. This is why we have a town manager, and I think it takes time away of the bigger things that we really need to generate and focus our time on. I think something like this, only this trustee's personal opinion, this shouldn't be coming to the board. to be going
Yeah,
through.
and one thing we're working on too is getting an auction house that's locally to give us a couple of things. One, they can auction some of the things that are valuable, but, and they can reach a larger audience than we're being able to reach. But the other thing, they can value things non-valuable. You know, they can tell us they're not worth anything, and so we can actually use that piece of paper to say, okay, we're going to take this and put it in the trash instead of storing it for years in a storage facility that's costing us $150 a month. And so that's what we're currently doing, and so that's how we're starting to change some of our policies.
Okay.
Does that ordinance indicate $4,000 represent the original purchase price or the current?
That's the original purchase price. And so a lot of these items may have a $0 value now,
'cause they're just-
but the ordinance says original purchase price of $1,000.
Right.
It's a resolution,
Okay.
which makes it a bit easier to amend.
So I would take direction from the board if you'd want us to amend that resolution.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that.
Did you mean I'll do that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Chief,
Good catch there, Chief.
Chief, do you have any, like, extra gates or fences?
We need a gate and a latch.
Agreement to lease vehicles and equipment for the Public Works and Police Department. Mr. Rummins.
This was in the 2019 budget. I think you all received information on the leases and such from me earlier. It's basically just looking at, I tried to find multiple sources. I came up with two. They both are very close to one another. One's $1,200 less than the other. Do you all have any questions regarding this?
This would be another item I would suggest, that we already budgeted for this.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Is there any reason this needs to come before the board?
It's just traditional, from what I was told, that we bring these to the board. And I would love to have the power to be able to not bring this to the board in the future.
I would like to see that. But again, we've already budgeted the dollars for said items, so.
And Robert, how many banks did you contact for this?
6.
6. So out of 6, we got 2 responses. And out of the 2, you think there's very little difference between the two?
Total between the two.
Over $356,000.
So is this
Is it
something
just-
that the town manager can draft up as a resolution to bring back to the board? How do we?
As far as not having this process?
Yeah,
again?
putting some definition if it's in budget.
Well,
and-
let's hang on for that for just a second. Do any members of the board have any questions for Mr. Rummins in regards to this? The lease.
Do you guys have a preference between who you use? I mean, what is it is there a difference, besides the $1,200, is there a difference?
We have a relationship with both of these banks currently.
Okay.
We think both the banks provide great customer service for us. I think the only difference between the 2 banks is the cost of the interest.
All right, so you wanna save the $1,200, save the $1,200.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Any other questions from the board? So all you need is direction to go forward with the
Definitely.
lease agreement?
Exactly.
Is the board in agreement with moving forward on this?
Yes.
Thank you.
You have your direction?
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Hey, get your cars now.
Then we will come back to the other item.
Yeah, I'll bring that up on the discussion, and maybe we can
Okay.
get that for our next meeting. Yeah.
Public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on to board authorization items. Ms. Hogan, informational presentation for Tri-Lakes Cares.
I've been contacted by Ms. Chapin with Tri-Lakes Cares, who'd like to present to you just an informal presentation on May 6th.
Okay. Is the board in agreement with that?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
I have 2 more if you have time for those.
Okay.
It was suggested that we get together and have a joint meeting with this board and Tri-View Metropolitan District. I don't have any dates lined up for that yet, but I just wanted authorization to reach out to the district and set that up.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I talked to Jim McGrady this week, and he would really enjoy an opportunity to get two boards together. We got a lot of things that we're working on.
And would it be fair to assume also too, we'll get input from them on what they'd like to see on the agenda, vice versa?
Definitely.
Because I know we had one of these years ago and it was, we all stared at each other. Not that it wasn't good, but.
Definitely take that under advisement.
Great.
Excellent.
And lastly, this one just came in yesterday, or else it would have been on your agenda, but the Girls of the West, the Pikes Peak Range Riders, and the Pikes Peak or Bust Rodeo would like to give their annual presentation that I'm sure
They're back again.
most of
Gosh,
you
it's been a
have
year.
seen before.
Like yesterday.
They are looking to do that either June 3rd or June 17th.
Does anybody have any qualms with them returning?
No,
I'm just shocked it's been a year.
I know.
Like, yeah.
Thank you.
That's good.
Crazy.
Anything else, Ms. Hogan?
That's it.
Okay. Town manager report. Does the board have any questions in regards to the town manager report?
I don't, but I understand your contract, Mr. Foreman, was executed last Wednesday. Congratulations.
It was. Thank you very much. The one thing, and I forgot to remind Laura, is one thing I forgot to put on the agenda, and I can't believe I did, was the swearing in of me. I think we need to do a formal swearing in, and so I'm sure nobody has the document in front of them. So we're going to do that at the next board meeting. So
Not swearing at you, swearing in.
swearing.
Gotcha.
Yes. So yes, I formally took the position today. So I appreciate it. Thank you. You made me cry now.
Mr. Foreman, what was the headline that we read in the
Oh
papers?
my goodness. The paper's here. What was the headline?
Yeah, what was it?
What was
Was
the
it
headline?
takes control? It was,
No.
yeah, what was it, Mr. Foreman?
Good answer.
Justice,
I didn't
stay
do
away
it.
from that one.
No, I wrote the red flag.
Yeah. It was
Come on.
Mike Foreman takes over monument. Was that it?
Thank you. I'll move on this one there.
Yeah, that was the one. That one's going to be framed in my office. So.
Yeah, really.
What?
But thank y'all very much. I really appreciate it.
Congratulations, Mr. Foreman.
Thank you.
Board of Trustees comments.
I would just like to see at our next meeting, maybe this becomes a discussion item, to really talk about this process of approvals and what goes through us and what can go through the town manager and his directors. And also secondary to that, and we've been talking about this for years, we have a new code enforcement that will be coming. And we've got a book this big, and half of those ordinances don't make any sense. So I'd like to discuss if we have a process in place, because
We do.
that new enforcement officer is only gonna be good as that book, and we can't pick and choose what we enforce. So I think we can be very proactive
We
now,
are.
rather than throwing them a master binder and go at it.
Yep.
So,
That's going to be one thing we're looking at, and I think Larry's got good news on our grant application as far as the, excuse me, planning and development grant that we're going to get. I talked to, you might not know about it, but we're being reviewed, and I think they're coming to Monument to review us for the grant. Do you know about that? Yeah.
They accepted the application,
Right.
which means that it was adequate and something they wanted to look at a little bit deeper. And they're coming next week, I think, on
Right.
Wednesday. It's a field review where they come in and we'll give them the dog and pony about the issues we have regarding zoning and subdivision and the pressures we have with regard to construction.
Right. Exactly. So that's a good move on our part, and for us to get that grant, that's the next step. So it was one step that wasn't done the last time, so it looks like we're in the running.
Will that address what Trustee Bornstein's?
Yes, as part of that, we're going to be addressing the code enforcement ordinances also at the same time. One of the directions that I gave to planning and development and to the police chief was we're going to take those steps even if we get the grant or even if we don't. And so we're going to start taking steps today, no matter if we get the grant or not.
Because I was under the impression in the last budget that we approved, there was about $200,000 that was authorized for doing that.
We did. We approved $100,000 match for that, and what I've instructed Larry to do is in this year's budget, add another $100,000 in case we don't get the grant. Then we would have the $200,000 that would cover the cost of redoing our ordinances.
And we're comprehensively looking at it, correct?
Right, exactly.
I've got a question though, and redoing and removing ordinances that make no sense to this town are two separate topics.
Right.
So somebody's got to go through that book and summarize that, which comes to the board, because two different things.
Right.
Until we reduce it, there's no sense to be rewriting. I mean,
But would they be identifying what
Yeah.
is
that-
not, what needs to come to the board saying? I don't
We
think you
need
guys
a comprehensive review of our code of ordinances.
so is that actively being done now, or are we waiting for something special to happen?
No, we were waiting for the person to be hired, bringing them in and having them be part of that process.
Do we have that many?
Based on the grant.
Okay.
No, not based on the grant.
So the code enforcement position, you're gonna task with starting to review ordinances comprehensively from start to finish.
Right.
Which makes sense, since we
Yep.
have the individual to do that.
Exactly.
Um,
We're hoping to hire somebody with some experience. That's what we're hoping to hire.
In the midst of that, is there a possibility to get proactive, and maybe the planning department or whatever group is assigned is doing, maybe reviewing 10 ordinances a week? Because 10 times 4 is 4. I mean, this knocks it out rather than us waiting to pass this on, because we've been talking about this for 5 years.
Right.
5 years. And back when with code enforcement and, well, we can't enforce this, we don't have the people, and this is documented, and that's okay. But moving forward, we can be working on this now. Some of these things, I have a master and I've gone through it.
Right.
And some of them are just like,
Can't ride your elephant on
Yep.
the sidewalk.
how did they get written? So,
Yeah.
so I think
I had that
all this-
meeting with staff 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And we started talking about that, and we're on it. We're moving.
So you're doing 20,
So-
okay.
We're gonna have, well,
When can we have an update? What would you say, a couple months?
2 board meetings. I can have you an
Board
update
meetings?
in
Does
2
that
boards.
satisfy what you're
The end of
asking
May.
for, that we at least get an update on?
Yeah, I'm not looking for, this is our action plan, because I think we can be working on it now. I'm
Right.
gonna be very honest.
Yep.
I don't have to wait a month to go, well, we're gonna strategize this and the new code enforcement and what, I think we can be doing this, taking little bites out of it, rather than giving this big
I think in a
elephant for someone
month,
to bite.
I think in a month, you'll see 4 ordinances brought to you. How about that?
Well, I'm not asking about ordinance being broad, I'm asking about
Changes.
things being removed that
Right.
shouldn't be there.
Okay,
Okay,
we
good.
can do that.
Thank you.
How about that?
Additional board
Got that,
comments?
Larry?
Sorry,
I
Larry.
only have 2 chapters that I deal with,
I know.
18.
Additional board comments?
Are we moving to adjournment right after executive session, or are we coming back into session?
We will be.
Which?
We'll be moving to adjournment, I believe.
Okay, all right. Just checking.
Okay, executive session. Next item is an executive session to discuss litigation between the town and Forest Lakes, and also to discuss litigation between a former employee and the town. Both matters will be discussed under the following sections. Section 24-6-402, number 4, and letter B, for the purpose of receiving legal advice from the town attorney on a specific legal question, and section 24-6-402, number 4, and letter E, to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiation, developing strategies for negotiations, and instructing negotiators. After the executive session, the board will adjourn the board meeting at the conclusion of the executive session. Do I have a motion to enter executive session?
Motion to enter executive session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan, will you take roll?
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0. We'll take a 5-minute recess.
Excuse me.
I'm not gonna live that one down for at least.
No.
I was like going,
I know I've done that before.
did I miss? You're gone now. Bringing four. Don't, you know what? You don't call. It's like, it's a good thing. It's not the news. I was like, it's a good week of
I think Tom's sitting back there next to everybody else in his jacket, decided it was too hot. So he went and turned it down.
But yeah, my son,
He must be.
I think so.
you do the after prom deal?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
About 3 in the morning.
Yep. I'm gonna go tree lighting. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
Oh, no. I try to avoid that.
Thank you, Kelly.
I like my sleep too.
Really?
It's good for the kiddos, right? Yes.
Chief.
Thank you, Jim.
Sure. You guys will harass me like that patio of a cigar.
No, I can't.
On my concrete
I don't know what I need to do.
On my concrete patio. Yeah.
I don't even know that. We might get
No,
some maybe.
Yeah.
Stay there.
Somebody's feeling
Whatever.
persnickety.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always done this. Whatever cigarettes if it's not appreciated
that's not-
or not helpful, please stay.
Oh, no, I.
If there's a fire ban and you're smoking a crack pipe, is the offense a fire ban and a crack pipe?
Both. Get him for both on that one.
I've always done it as a courtesy.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. So no, thank you. No, it's totally up to you. Like I thought you wanted to go home to your kids, family. You know, but if it's helpful, if the help is not helpful, that's my question.
That would be good. Thanks.
Just remind me. Yeah. And sorry about the confusion. You know what? I'm gonna just do it. I'm just gonna do it. And we have some for our other clients. I'm just gonna change. I'll send it to you and I'll change it. Whatever down to monument. We just can't do because everybody else basically is biting anything. Well, not everybody else, but and I think it's actually a bit of practice. It you know, get out through those transparency. I'm not really sure why. Ordinance, yes. Resolution, no. Honestly. Oh yeah. But yeah. So why wouldn't you? Why would you if you're gonna do something, right? If you're gonna harm it. I don't know. I mean, that would yeah, of course. And sometimes it like refines the issue. Democracy is messy. So that's how I look at it, and that's why, and I apologize. So, but I'm gonna get there.
Probably have to say much more about it since.
She's pretty busy during the session, session.
Strikingly. Strikingly silly. And do you understand? I didn't just put like that. Not during. So I think people will notice that.
Or is it?
What I do?
Alright, so the rule is, just remind me because I'll forget. The rule is, we come back, you stay. We don't come back, you don't.
You wanted one, right?
That's the simple.
Well, that means we need a helipad. And a pilot. And a roof. What does that mean? Yeah. Especially
Pretty sure there's an ordinance against it.
yeah.
Because that road was. Do you want to put it at? Exactly.
This is amazing.
It's really nice.
Even an executive session will be out here by my 9. This is amazing.
Yeah, it went really smooth.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna snow, apparently. What? I heard from Trustee Stevens that it was gonna snow tomorrow. I didn't know that. I was under the bliss that spring.
Are you for real?
No, that's what he said.
Tomorrow's supposed to be almost 70, I think.
Or was it
Wednesday, I think.
Wednesday.
Oh, Wednesday.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. news to me.
We're not.
I thought spring was here already.
Well, let's see.
Oh, no.
We got the nice weather coming.
Where do you live?
I live in Denver.
Oh, yeah. We have a what we call a Mother's Day rule here. If you plant before Mother's Day.
Oh, yeah, of course. That's everywhere. I
Oh, that's
was
everywhere?
born and raised in Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
Don't never plant before Mother's Day.
Right, because everything freezes and dies. Like, you're like, no.
Yeah, I did. And then plant like the day. But if you don't plant on Mother's Day, you're screwed.
Right.
It's basically 1 or 2 days.